Welcome back to the deep dive where, we kind of like to take all this like super detailed information and try to, kind of boil it down, so to speak,
Right,
so you
yeah.
can become, seriously well informed on all these kind of interesting topics.
That's fast.
Yeah, facts, exactly.
Dive right in.
Dive right in. And today we're going somewhere, I think, a little off the beaten path, so to speak. We're going to be exploring a concept that I think taps into something, pretty fundamental to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think it kind of gets at that primal desire for self-reliance.
For sure.
We're going to be unpacking a really comprehensive plan for building an underground bunker
Okay.
using a school bus.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been going deep on a document from Street Unveiling The Truth.
Okay.
It's a community that's really focused on education and really understanding a variety of things. And they've actually put together a surprisingly intricate blueprint for doing this very project.
Wow.
So, I mean, when you first hear, underground school bus bunker,
Yeah.
It might sound a little extreme,
It's
a
not
little out there.
the first thing that comes to mind.
Right. And I think that's a very natural reaction
For sure. Yeah.
to have.
It's definitely not your typical weekend DIY project.
No.
You know what I mean?
Not at all.
But that's what I think is so compelling about it, right? I mean, it's a case study in resourcefulness and really proactive planning, right? I mean, you're planning for a whole
range
of challenges.
Yeah.
And the source material that we're looking at, they actually outline a bunch of potential uses for this.
Right.
I mean, you could use it as like an immediate emergency shelter.
Right.
You could use it as longer-term living quarters.
Yeah.
You could even just use it for secure underground storage.
Right.
Like so many things.
And before we get into all the specifics, it's really crucial for all of you listening out there to understand that all the information that we're going to be discussing today, taken directly from this document, is purely for educational purposes.
Right.
This is not meant to be like professional advice about construction or safety or even legal matters.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So any decisions or actions related to this kind of thing, they should only be made in consultation.
Yes.
With qualified experts,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
And obviously,
Of course.
in compliance with any laws and regulations,
100%.
that might be applicable.
Yeah, I mean, we're really here to explore the what and the how as it's presented in the document.
Exactly.
We're not
practical guide.
giving you a step-by-step, go do this,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's a really important thing
Super important.
for everybody to bear in mind as we go through this.
Absolutely.
So with that said, I mean, why don't we get into the foundational stuff? The plan starts. I mean, it logically starts with planning and design.
Right.
What did you find were like the most critical initial considerations?
So I think the document really, really does a good job emphasizing how important it is to define the purpose of the bunker.
Right from the start.
Right up front.
Yeah.
Are we talking short-term emergency refuge?
Mm-hmm.
Are we talking a space for more kind of long-term living?
Yeah.
Or is it,
Storage.
I mean, that initial decision, I think, has like
It's going to impact
a ripple effect
through the rest of it.
Yeah, it's like the first domino.
Absolutely.
That's gonna knock over
For sure.
all the other ones.
100%.
Right. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I mean, your needs for something like, sanitation.
Right. Are going to be drastically different if you're planning on being down there for a couple days versus a couple months, right?
Absolutely.
Huge difference.
The source also points out, and they say this is non-negotiable, that location selection is a key first step.
Yeah.
What are some of the key factors that they highlight in choosing the right spot?
I mean, location is so important for a project like this, and they really stress how you need to find an elevated and stable site. So the main concern there, I think, is really trying to reduce the risk of flooding.
Right.
Which
because you're underground.
Yeah. So that's a huge problem.
Right.
And depending on where you live, they also mention thinking about avalanches.
Wow. Yeah.
Which
that's not something I would have thought of.
Yeah, but avalanches create so much pressure.
Right. That they could be a real concern. But I think even beyond those more obvious ones, the stability of the ground itself is really, really important.
Yeah.
So you're going to want to avoid places that are known for, landslides or lots of soil movement, because that could really, really compromise the structure that you're building.
Of your buried bus.
Exactly.
Okay, so you've figured out what you're going to use it for. You found the location, and now the next phase is like, kind of where the rubber meets the road, right? We're talking about prep and excavation, digging a big hole in the ground.
It gets real.
Yeah.
This is where it gets real.
What are some of the essential points that they bring up in this phase?
There's two things that really stand out to me.
Yeah.
The first one, and this is really, really important, is to make sure you have all the permits.
Yes.
You need both for the excavation and for any construction.
Yeah, of course.
You're going to do.
Yeah, you can't just go digging up your backyard.
No, not at all.
Right.
This is not something you want to try and do.
Yeah.
Like on the down low, so to speak.
Right.
I mean, there's
regulations for a reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Big time. So that's foundational.
Yeah, you gotta be legit.
You got to be legit. The second thing is just the sheer scale of the excavation.
Yeah, how big are we talking?
So they're talking about a trench that's not only big enough to fit the school bus, but it's got to be way bigger than that.
Okay, and why is that?
So they're saying at least 3 or 4 feet of earth coverage.
Wow.
All around the bus.
That's a lot of dirt.
Yeah, and there's a few reasons for that.
Okay.
The biggest one, I think, is radiation shielding.
Oh.
That's kind of a key.
Like nuclear attack kind of scenario.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that amount of soil really helps to absorb and reduce certain types of radiation.
Right, okay.
And then, I mean, the second thing is that all that earth, it actually helps to make the structure much more stable.
So it's almost like it's holding the bus together.
Yeah, it's like a big hug.
Yeah.
It's going to put a lot of pressure on it.
Yeah.
But all that earth around it helps to kind of to spread it out.
Right, like distribute it.
Yeah, so it doesn't all go in one place.
So you don't get like a pressure point, so to speak.
Exactly. And then you also need the space for things like the ventilation system.
Oh, right.
You got to get air in there.
Yeah.
And potentially you might want to add like another layer of reinforcement.
Okay. We'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
So you've got this massive hole in the ground. You've got your bus.
Right, ready to go.
What's the first thing you do to the bus?
So the first thing they talk about is insulation.
Okay.
They really recommend using high-density spray foam insulation.
Okay.
And reinforced rigid foam boards.
All right.
Like all over the inside of the bus.
Okay, why is that so important?
I mean, it's important for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
First of all, it helps to regulate the temperature inside the bunker.
So you're not,
you don't want it to be
greasing.
Too hot, too cold.
Yeah.
And then it also helps to reduce condensation.
Okay, and why is that important?
Well, if you're underground, in an enclosed space, you can get mold and mildew.
That's not good.
Not good.
Especially if you're living down there.
No.
Not at all.
And then as a bonus, it actually can help a little bit with radiation protection.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. What about those big, like, school bus windows? I mean, those don't exactly scream secure.
No, not at all.
Right.
No, and they actually talk about that.
Okay.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
In the plan.
Okay. What do they suggest?
They have like 2 main approaches.
Okay.
One is to completely cover the windows.
Okay.
With, something really, really strong and durable, like thick steel plates. That's the like maximum security option.
Okay.
And
max radiation shielding.
Exactly. Okay. Or if you want to be able to see out, they suggest using like blast resistant glass.
Oh wow. Okay. So they do make that.
Yeah.
All right.
They do. And then for the entryway,
at the door,
they really emphasize how important it is to have a really heavy, airtight sealed hatch.
Yeah, because that's your only way in and out.
Exactly. That's your only way in and out. And you need to be able to
seal it up. If you have to.
If there's some kind of contamination outside, you need to be able to seal yourself in.
Okay, so you've got the insulation, you've got the openings secured.
Right.
But a school bus, like a typical school bus frame, isn't really meant to withstand tons and tons of earth.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Not at all.
How do they talk about beefing it up? Yeah, so this is one of the most critical parts of the whole thing.
Okay.
I mean, they talk about using steel beams to reinforce the frame of the bus.
So you're basically
using a skeleton,
stronger skeleton
inside of it.
Inside, exactly. But it doesn't stop there.
Okay.
They also recommend building another structure outside using earth bags.
What's an earth bag?
An earth bag is basically a really, really strong bag that you fill with dirt. Okay.
And you pack it down really tight.
And then you stack them.
And you stack them all around the bus.
All around the bus.
And that helps to distribute the pressure of all that earth.
Right.
So
it's that the bus isn't getting crushed.
Yeah, so it's not all pushing on the bus.
Okay.
And then they talk about adding like even more layers of protection.
Wow.
Like more earth or even concrete.
Okay.
To really beef up that radiation shielding.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got a very reinforced bus at this point.
You're pretty safe and sound in there.
Safe and sound. Okay.
At this point.
What about air? Like breathing.
Yeah, so ventilation is crucial.
Yeah, you got to breathe.
Can't live without air.
Right.
And they suggest using two different systems.
Okay.
One is passive ventilation.
Okay. What's that?
So that's basically vents with filters on them.
Okay.
That let air in and out.
Okay.
Naturally. But sometimes you need a little bit more.
Right.
So they also talk about using an active ventilation system.
Okay.
That uses fans.
Okay.
But the fans are solar powered.
Ah.
And they have HEPA filters on them.
Oh, okay. And why HEPA filters?
HEPA filters are really, really good at removing really tiny particles.
Okay. So that's like next level.
Yeah, it's like extra protection.
Okay, and solar powered so that
you don't have to be
tied to the grid.
Exactly. Off grid all the way.
Or water.
Right. So for water, they mainly focus on using a rainwater collection system.
Okay.
So that means
gutters and stuff.
Yeah, you got to catch the water.
Right. Okay.
From the roof or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you got to filter it.
Right.
To make sure it's clean.
Because bird poop and all that.
Exactly. You don't want to be drinking that.
Right. Okay.
And then they talked about storing the water.
Yeah.
In tanks inside the bus.
Okay, so you've got your own water supply.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
Depending on how much rain you get.
Right, of course.
But they really, really emphasize how important it is to have a good filtration system.
Right, because you don't want to get sick.
No, not at all.
Especially when you're down there.
Oh,
there's no hospitals around.
Right, exactly.
Okay. So
where there's water in.
Yeah.
There's got to be water out.
There's got to be water out.
Right.
What do you do about waste?
Yeah, what do you do about the toilet situation?
So they suggest using a portable composting toilet.
Okay.
And the big thing here is that it has to be
self-contained.
Sealed.
Yeah.
Totally self-contained.
Right.
So that you're not,
spreading germs and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
No. Especially
in a small space.
Yeah.
Like that.
All right. So we've got
air, we've got water, we've got a way to get rid of waste. What about like keeping the lights on?
Right. So for power, they really push solar energy as the main source.
So like panels on the roof or...
Yeah. So they talk about putting solar panels up above the bunker.
Right.
And ideally you want to have
a good system.
A system that's big enough to power everything.
Right. And can handle like all kinds of weather.
All kinds of weather, rain, shine.
Yeah. Snow, sleet.
Yeah. And they even talk about using panels that can move.
Oh, okay.
So you can adjust the angle.
So you can get the best
like for most sun.
All right.
And then to make sure you have power all the time.
Yeah.
They also recommend a battery storage system.
Okay, so the panels charge the battery.
Exactly.
And then you can use the batteries when the sun's not out.
Exactly. And then just in case, they also suggest having a generator.
Okay.
Like a propane one.
Right.
As a backup.
So if all else fails.
Yeah. If the solar's not working.
Yeah.
And the batteries are dead.
Yeah. You gotta have a backup.
You gotta have a backup.
Okay. So we've got all these systems up and running. How do they envision like people actually living inside this bus?
So it's all about efficiency.
Okay.
Right. You've got to use the space you have.
Right.
As best as you can.
Okay.
And they recommend like really clearly defining areas.
Okay.
For sleeping, for cooking, for sanitation.
So like almost like a tiny house?
Yeah, it's like a little apartment down there.
Okay.
And to make the most of the space, they suggest using modular furniture.
Okay, and what's that?
Modular furniture is stuff that can be
like transformed.
Yeah, like folded up or moved around.
Okay.
Or even used for different things.
Right.
So, a table that can turn into a bed or something like that.
Right. Okay, so we've got the furniture figured out.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of stuff do they tell you to stock up on?
So they've got a whole list of essential supplies.
Right.
And it's all the stuff you need to survive.
Okay, like
so they talk about like non-perishable food.
Right.
Things that'll last a long time.
Canned goods, stuff like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then a really good water purification system.
Okay. In case the rain stops.
Yeah, just in case.
Okay.
A first aid kit.
Yeah.
Obviously.
If you get hurt.
If someone gets hurt.
Yep. Right.
And then radiation protection gear.
Right.
Like potassium iodide tablets.
What do those do?
So those actually help to protect your thyroid from absorbing radiation.
Okay, in case of like...
Yeah, in case of like a nuclear event or something.
Right. Okay, so beyond the radiation stuff, what other safety features do they talk about?
Fire safety is really, really important.
Yeah, because you're
underground.
You're in a sealed metal tube.
It's a metal box.
Right.
So they talk about having fire extinguishers everywhere.
Okay.
And smoke detectors.
Of course.
And carbon monoxide detectors.
Yeah, because if you're running a generator,
exactly.
Yeah, you could get carbon monoxide poisoning, and you'd never know.
No, it's odorless.
Yeah. Okay.
And then they talk about security, so reinforcing the outside of the bus.
Okay, even more.
Yeah, even more, like steel plating.
Okay.
And maybe even using camouflage.
Oh wow.
So people don't see it.
Okay.
And then obviously good locks on all the doors.
Right. Yeah, you don't want anybody just wandering in.
No, not at all.
Okay. Beyond the like purely functional stuff and safety.
Right.
They also talk about like making the place livable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the final touches.
What are some of the things they bring up there?
So they suggest using LED lights.
Okay.
So you don't use too much power.
Right. Energy efficient.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then they also say, it's good to bring some personal items.
Ah, okay.
Like comfortable bedding, maybe some books or games or something.
Yeah.
It's a stressful situation.
You got to keep your sanity when you're down there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
They even give you like a cost breakdown.
They do.
Right.
Yeah.
For each phase.
Yeah.
So what kind of like financial investment are we talking here?
So it really depends
on a bunch of things.
Yeah.
Like what kind of materials you use.
Right.
Whether you do the work yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Or hire someone.
Or hire somebody to do it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they say excavation is probably going to be somewhere between $500 and $2,000.
Wow.
And then modifying the bus.
Yeah.
Insulation, reinforcement, all that.
Okay.
That's probably going to be between $1,000 and $3,000.
Wow. Okay.
And then the structural reinforcements.
Yeah.
Like the steel beams and the earth bags.
Okay.
They say that's probably going to be another $500 to $2,000.
Okay.
The ventilation system.
Yeah.
$300 to $800.
Yeah.
Water management. About the same. $300 to $800.
Okay.
Solar power is going to be the big one.
Right.
$1,500 to $3,500.
Wow. Okay.
And then stocking up on supplies. $600 to $2,000. And then safety features.
Yeah.
Another $300 to $600.
So if you add all that up.
Yeah. So all in all.
What are we looking at?
I mean, roughly.
Yeah.
You're probably talking somewhere between $5,300.
Okay.
And $14,700.
Wow.
To build this whole thing.
That's a pretty big spread.
It is.
Right?
It is, yeah.
But I guess it makes sense given all the variables.
Yeah, and that's just an estimate from the source.
Yeah.
So
real world can be?
Real world, it could be more.
Yeah, it could be less.
Could be less.
Yeah. Expert speaker.